Our film begins with a young man named Sade, who is in his final year of high school. We know that Sade is introverted and speaks very little. He has set strict rules for himself to avoid getting into trouble. The first rule is to remain silent for as long as possible, as silence never exposes a person to problems. The second rule is to not stand out in any way, so as not to attract attention. That's why Sade's involvement in any activity is always minimal. For example, he is an assistant to hockey players, a substitute actor in school plays, and also a secondary player in the school's video game team. The third rule is to stay away from a student named Chuck. We know that Chuck causes a lot of trouble and physically assaults anyone who annoys him. He also records his actions and uploads them to his YouTube channel. One of the simplest problems Chuck caused was when he beat up a student who was on the verge of death. As a result, Chuck was expelled from his old school and transferred to Sade's school. However, because his father is a wealthy and well-known man, he always manages to get him out of trouble without any consequences. It seems that Sade's life is very routine. Every day, he goes to his house where he lives with his mother and her friend. He spends most of his time in his room until it's time to sleep. One day, Sade arrives at school and sits with his friend Jim, who wants to become famous on social media. Jim disagrees with the way Sade lives his life and the rules he has set for himself. While they are talking, a girl named Tifa arrives. We know that Sade has loved her since he was 8 years old, especially because she dances on ice. However, she is currently in a relationship with Chuck, so Sade doesn't even think about getting close to her. Shortly after, Sade and Jim walk to the field, and a girl named Luna interrupts them. It is clear that Luna and Jim love each other, but they argue most of the time. Jim changes his behavior towards her because he has many followers on social media. Meanwhile, Sade returns home and finds his mother and her friend waiting for him. His mother tells him that she received a message from the school informing her that the end-of-year party is approaching. Sade says he doesn't want to go, but his mother advises him to attend the party so that he can have memories to cherish when he grows up. Days pass, and Sade spends most of his time playing video games. One day, he arrives at school feeling very tired because he hasn't slept for about 72 hours. The effects of sleep deprivation start to show, such as excessive eating and not thinking clearly. Sade does not have the energy to engage in sports, and the last thing he wants is to lose control to the point where he passes by Chuck and curses him without feeling it. In this case, Chuck gets angry and starts beating him mercilessly in front of the students until a teacher comes and separates them. Then Chuck directs his words to Sade in front of everyone, threatening to kill him when they meet again. After a few hours, Sade regains consciousness in his room and finds Jim sitting next to him. He tells him that he lost consciousness for 7 hours and also says that Chuck received a 2-week suspension from school, which means he will return to school at the end-of-year party and will undergo anger management lessons. Mr. Sade concludes that Chuck, once he returns to school, will want to seek revenge on him, and he does not rule out the possibility of killing him. Therefore, he decides to enjoy the remaining 15 days of his life as much as possible. The next day, Mr. Sade arrives at school and begins to think about what is left of his life and decides to live this period without fear. Therefore, he interrupts the teacher's speech and objects to all the things he disagrees with. The students admire his courage, and each one begins to express their opinion. Mr. Sade leaves the classroom, and despite his pride in himself, he wonders where this courage came from. His friend Jim is proud of him and what he did. On the same day, Mr. Sade receives a message from an unknown number saying that she is a girl and that she admires him. Mr. Sade feels happy because he finally found a girl he likes. After school, Mr. Sade goes to his job as a delivery driver at a pizza restaurant, and after finishing his work, he sits with his friend Jim and starts writing a list of things he wants to do before he dies. Most of these things violate the rules he used to follow. The next day, Mr. Sade goes to school and receives a message from the unknown girl saying that she is watching him from afar. Mr. Sade looks around and finds Tiff talking to him. Mr. Sade believes that she is the one talking to him and feels extreme happiness because he has liked her for a long time. However, Tiff does not touch on this subject, but apologizes for what Chuck did and says that her father feels distressed because he cannot control his reactions. On this day, Mr. Sade has a hockey match with the team, and as usual, his task is to help them prepare the equipment and nothing more. We know that Eric, the coach's son, is the best student in this game, which he basically hates. However, his father refused to allow him to quit. It appears that Jim is the match commentator, and he finishes the first part of the match with Eric's team being defeated. As a result, the coach starts yelling at all of them, especially his son. After that, the team prepares for the second part, and they enter the match. However, Sid notices that Eric is not happy, and Eric admits that he doesn't love this game and that his life dream is to be a famous dancer. So, Sid decides to help him by wearing Eric's outfit and taking his place in the match. No one from the audience recognizes him because his face is not visible. At first, Sid doesn't know how to play, but then he remembers that he used to be good at ice dancing. He also realizes that he has little time left in his life, so he decides to focus in order to enjoy it. Sid impresses the crowd with his performance, and as soon as he takes off his helmet and they realize that it's Sid and not Eric, they are even more amazed. The coach decides to include him in the team, and the unknown girl continues to communicate with Sid, and she is happy with everything he does. On the fourth day, it becomes clear that Sid has become one of the most famous students in the school, and everyone dreams of greeting him. On this day, the student union elections begin, and a girl named Megan is running for president. She talks to her colleagues and starts looking for an assistant, but no one is interested, and it becomes clear that they hate her. Sid sympathizes with her and decides to be her assistant. Megan agrees because she doesn't have anyone else in front of her. We know that he did this because he wants to disrupt the school system before he dies, and he feels that this is the perfect opportunity. After that, Sid decides to try drugs for the first time in his life, so he goes to a student who sells drugs inside the school and buys from him. On the fifth day, Sid finds out that Eric has joined the dance team, and he is happy that he finally did what he loves. On this day, Sid has a rehearsal in the theater, and we know that there is a student named Iron who performs in front of him. It becomes clear that Sid is jealous of Iron and wants to get rid of him. On the sixth day, the day of the student union election results, Megan is very nervous and wants to win the position. She takes some pills from Sid, thinking they are calming pills, but Sid shocks her by telling her that they are drugs. Megan, who is drinking drugs for the first time in her life, is afraid of losing the position. Sid decides to support her, so he also takes drugs to reassure her that she is not alone. Then, they have to speak in front of the students, but they are not in their right minds and start doing strange things. The students laugh at them, but in a short time, Sid manages to fulfill several wishes from his list. On the day of the play, Sid decides to take Tief's place as the lead actor. He finds out that Elon, the main actor, uses a certain substance to color his skin. So, Sid replaces that substance with another one, but it ends up burning his face. As a result, he has to apologize and back out of the role at the last moment. This leads to Sid being chosen to play the role instead, fulfilling one of his wishes. His mother and her friend are present at the play, and they are amazed by his performance. After the show, Sid takes the opportunity to invite Tief to a party that will be held the next day at a classmate's house. Tief agrees and leaves. On the day of the party, which is the 8th day, Sid and his friend Jim ride in Jim's car, with Luna, the color, accompanying them. They pick up Tief from his house and arrive at the party. Sid tries to enjoy himself, but in the middle of the party, they notice a guy approaching them from a distance. It turns out to be Chuck, who they realize was allowed to leave anger management classes a week early. Chuck is out for revenge and wants to kill Sid. However, suddenly Chuck's car catches fire, and he forgets about everything else and rushes to put out the fire. Afterward, Tief talks to Sid and tells him that she recently broke up with Chuck and decided to give Sid a chance. but she apologizes and says she doesn't feel any emotions towards him. Sid realizes that she wasn't the one who had been texting him from an unknown number. Teef says goodbye and leaves, while Sid goes home feeling dejected. The next day, Sid arrives at school, and while playing video games with his team, he gathers his courage and speaks to them, encouraging them to leave the team if they're not happy. He does this because he senses that there are students among them who don't like what he's doing. At that moment, he receives a message from the unknown girl and sees a girl holding a phone and laughing. He deduces that she is the one and goes to talk to her. The girl feels embarrassed and tries to run away, but Sid stops her and learns that her name is Kitty and she is a fan of his personality. However, she was too shy to admit it. Sid suggests that they go out together and she agrees. They meet multiple times and quickly grow closer. One day, Jim is walking his dog when he sees Chuck and his friends in a car. Chuck offers Jim the chance to ride with them and record a video. This is Jim's dream, to become famous, so he immediately agrees without hesitation. The next day, Sid arrives at school and is surprised to find that all the students are talking about him and seem annoyed with him. One of the students shows him a video, and Sid discovers that Chuck took advantage of the fact that Jim was drunk and made him reveal all of Sid's secrets. Jim says in the video that Sid wrote a list of his last wishes. Currently, he is using drugs and is close to Katie, just to enjoy his last 2 days with her. He talks about Elon and how he convinced him to give up his role at the last moment. Because of this, all the students hate Sid because of the video and what happened. Sid is kicked out of the video game team and also from the hockey team. He wants to talk to Katie and tell her the truth, but he discovers that she didn't come to school today. Sid goes back home and finds Jim waiting for him. Jim is coming to apologize for his behavior, but Sid refuses to forgive him and blames him. Sid exposes all of Jim's secrets just because he wants to be famous and known by people. Jim leaves and Sid feels frustrated. He tries to contact Katie and apologize to her, but she refuses to forgive him. The next day, Luna goes to Sid's house and asks him to forgive Jim because he didn't mean to hurt him. This happens on the day of the end-of-year party. Sid doesn't want to go, but Luna convinces him by saying that if he doesn't go, people will continue to believe all the rumors about him and lose trust in those around them. Luna admits that she was the one who burned Shock's car to protect Sid. After many discussions, Sid is convinced by Luna's words and decides to go to the party. The first thing he does at the party is to reconcile with Jim, but Jim is still upset and walks away without responding. Then Sid goes to talk to Katie, who has completely rejected him. Sid apologizes to her and tells her that he didn't mean to upset her. He also tells her that she is the only girl he has ever loved and that he feels that Shock could come at any moment and kill him. Because of this, he says goodbye to her and leaves. After a while, Shock arrives at the party and hits Sid in the stomach with a metal pipe, causing him to lose consciousness. When Sid wakes up in the hospital, he finds Jim sitting next to him, who also has injuries on his face. Jim tells Sid what happened after he lost consciousness, revealing that Jim fought Shock to protect his friend. Then Luna enters and starts hitting Shock as well. Because of what happened at the end of the party, all the groups start fighting with each other. Sid blames Jim for what happened and leaves the hospital. He finds the hospital full of other students, and Shock is seriously injured with handcuffs on his hands because of his actions. The other students are happy that Sid is still alive after all the beatings he received from Shock. Sid ignores everyone and goes to stand next to Katie and tells her to forget everything that happened and start over. Kitty is happy and agrees, and the two begin dancing together in the hospital corridors. Thus, Sid is able to fulfill most of his wishes while at the same time being able to survive Shook. And so the movie ends. See you soon.